Welcome to the Sports 2000 podcast. I'm Sue Stockdale. I'm the host for the series, taking you behind the scenes of this British sports car prototype series that includes Durotex and Pintos. And I talk to some of the people in the Sports 2000 community, giving you an insight into why Sports 2000 is sometimes called motorsport's best kept secret. My guests today are Nick and Charlie Hyett, who race in the Pinto Historic category. I first interviewed their dad, Ross Hyett, in episode 8, earlier in the series. Firstly, I'm going to speak to Nick Hyett, who is the older of the two brothers. And Nick was part of the team of L'Equipe Roast Beef in episode 18, who did the 24-hour endurance race at Paul Ricard. And I'm interviewing both Nick and Charlie at Brands Hatch at round 2 of the championship. We're at Brands Hatch today, race 2, as part of the support race for the GT World Challenge series here. How have you found being here today?
As usual, coming back to Brands GP, it's always a pleasure. I think all of us were a bit tentative as to what the weather was going to do this morning. It was very grey, very cold, but it held out. And it was good. We had a good morning, clean qualifying, which is also quite rare. I think we had 36 cars on the grid. It's a lot, considering, we were lucky enough at Silverstone to have split grids. And the Durotex do come through. So good, clean qualifying, very good. And then the race was something else.
There was a bit of safety car for quite a long time, wasn't there?
Yeah, it seems to be a theme here at Brands. If you remember last year, we had a 20-minute safety car, and I think we almost capped that again this year for the first race. So hopefully tomorrow is a different story, and we can all actually have a bit of fun going around a racetrack at the right speed rather than a car park.
So Nick, when you're in the car and there's that safety car, what's going through your mind? Because I imagine you've got to be ready to go at any moment.
Right.
Or you're held in abeyance. What does that feel like?
Yeah, it's a bit weird. I think one of the things that goes through my mind is, like everybody, it's quite obvious to say, but when is it coming in, right? And I think we had this incident today where we all thought the situation could have been dealt with maybe quicker, and we weren't anticipating when it was going to come in. And if you think about the series that we're in, or at least the cars with the Pintos, we are at the back, as this knock-on effect towards the back of the grid. And that's always something in my mind, is when do you start really getting the tyres back up to temperature, the brakes. I was stuck behind my dad, actually, and I think for 3 of the laps I was waving at him saying, go on, catch up with them, and thinking, but he's been doing this probably longer than I've been on the planet, so he probably knows what he's doing and doesn't need me heckling him. But there was always that anticipation of, we should just get as close as we can to the pack, because I remember in my first year I didn't know what to do. Of course, I read the regulations, so I knew what the rules were, but I was very tentative. And I remember someone came up to me and said, listen, if there's a safety car, catch up. So I was hoping that we'd be right on the back of everybody and then we'd just be going around. But yeah, I think it's more just constant anticipation and trying to figure out, when do you lean on the tyres, the brake, just always going through your head.
And given that your dad wasn't catching up in quite the way that you might have wanted him to, does he ever give you any tips on how to drive? Or
no.
Like, you've got a car, just your competitor now.
Absolutely. Yeah, no. There's no, not at all. No, if I get a pat on the back, then that's as good as it gets at the moment. No, he's a competitor. Of course he helps. We're going through the videos right now. No, of course he helps. But I was just trying to think about, okay, what is he doing? He's obviously staying back for a reason, because he's no fool. So as soon as he started to pick up, I started to go as well, and was really trying to follow his lead, a bit like a dance with your father, which is a bit weird. But yeah. And
when you're in the race, do you think about him as your dad, or you think about him as a competitor?
I certainly did today, but I think he forgot that I was his son, because we went through Paddock Hill Bend on turn 1, and we said, okay, if we're going in at the same time, we'll just kind of go through it nicely. And he very, let's just say, graciously cut across my nose and managed to pick the position. So yeah, 1-0 to him. I'll remember that.
I guess that's the advantage of reviewing those videos together later.
Yes, I can certainly point out where boy did good and where boy did wrong. So yeah, I need to be more aggressive.
Now, we've spoken before because you were in the episode where we talked about going to France and doing the 24-hour race, and that seemed to really be a pinnacle at that point for you. And you were back again this year, or 2022.
That's right, yeah.
So how was that? Because that was a family team then, wasn't it?
It was, yeah. I think there was a lot of anticipation and expectation. We had a good team out there. Charlie, little brother, who's absolutely flying. We were kind of looking at him going, yeah, go and put in a good time and such. And it was amazing. Unfortunately, we had a few problems again, and you can't help but be impacted by that a little bit. Does put a bit of a damper on it. But it was, again, just amazing to actually have like a family team in a sport that's not really built around that team ethos, if you will, where you're all jumping in and out of the car and sharing absolutely everything with each other. So that was, once again, really, really memorable and quite unique. I think if we get to do it again, then fantastic. So.
And do you think having done it the first year, then you were better informed and ready, prepared in a different way to do it a second time?
Yeah, absolutely. But my gosh, you can never anticipate what might get thrown at you. So you just never know. These things, it's man and machine. And if the machine decides to go or the man, whichever order, it can be a problem. So we faced a few mechanical problems, let's just say. And that was interesting. And that just completely threw the psyche out a little bit. Once you're in with a problem in 3 hours, you're kind of going, it's a long old way to go.
So in terms of the car preparation and being part of a team here, how does that work? Because you're part of Pegasus, is that right?
Yeah, so Pegasus Classic Engineering. We have Trevor Foster, who is essentially, it's called the director, if you will, leading the team. And we've got 3 amazing mechanics. They just don't put a foot wrong, really. The cars are just set up. The amount of times guys come over to us and compliment how the cars are set up, how they look, the difference between other things that they've seen. It's really a tribute to these guys and all the hard work they do. We're so lucky in that way. None of us who are actually driving the cars, this sounds terrible, but are mechanically gifted at all and quite ignorant to it. So we just try to do our best to bring them home in as good a state as possible and just try and do as much we can for them on the track. Adam, who runs me, just brilliant. For 2 years, hasn't put a foot wrong. Just the car just goes. It's brilliant.
And do you have to give him any feedback when you come in so that if there is something that's not quite right, he has a sense of what that is? Is it that sort of communication between the two of you?
Yeah, certainly. Yeah, like especially if there's an off. And I'm still learning that. Even if it's anything, they want to know, did you touch some grass? Did you pick up anything? Literally anything. And then we have had moments where maybe we haven't fed that back because we didn't see it as a problem, but it can be for them. So as soon as we come in, the first thing is quick check down, run down of the car, any problems, any bashes, any bruises that you might think of, and then we'll go through the video and just check, just to make sure that that's the truth. Because sometimes in the heat of the battle, we're not sure what we do sometimes. So yeah, absolutely. There's always a feedback, and including the way that the car's handling, if we can. It's not necessarily my skill, but I'll try and say to them, I think this was happening, and they can then go and check and give some feedback.
Now, we'll also be having a conversation with your brother, Charlie.
Mm-hmm.
How do you rate yourselves? I've spoken to your dad before, Ross Hyett, listener. Charlie, as your brother.
Yeah.
Who's better than the other?
Oh, Charlie. No, there's no hesitation. Last year was wonderful because Charlie was in a little Tiger and, his objective was just to finish races. But we all knew he was quick, like from the off. Just naturally gifted, really quick. His feedback was brilliant, always on point, always a bit annoying, but on point. But I had a very good car, so I had some good results. And now he's in pretty much the same car as me, and he's just proving he's just quick. And you can't do anything about it. So it's amazing. He's like a duck to water with this type of thing. And I'm a bit like an upside down canoe. So I'm just trying to get myself back around so that I can go a bit quicker. But I tend to enjoy the qualifying sessions where I can have a bit of extra momentum around some of the corners, particularly onto the straight, and then get a really quick lap. But in terms of racecraft, Charlie and my dad, it's just natural, absolutely natural. So he's absolutely brilliant. He's really a very good driver. Yeah. Unfortunately, I don't want to be saying that. Edit that.
Maybe they're setting the benchmark for you, so something to aspire to for the future.
I hate to agree with you, but I think so. I do have to remind them, and I probably shouldn't say this on a podcast, but I do have 20 kilos on him, so I will keep throwing that out there. And my car's heavier.
I'm hearing reasons going out here.
We've all got them. Trust me. Millions more. No, but honestly, he's brilliant, and to see him up the front, it's great. Because, like I said, if we go back to the topic of the cars being prepared, what the guys are doing here for is at Pegasus Classic Engineering, it's where the car should be, really. They're immaculate. And so if Charlie can at least fly the flag and we can get there, then even better. But that's it, isn't it? It's a game of just incremental changes and inches. So absolutely, sometimes you just have to race yourself and soon you'll be racing the others.
And looking ahead to the rest of this season, are you looking forward to any particular other circuits that you'll be racing at?
Yeah, I think we've got Castle Combe next, which I've never done. So that's going to be interesting. We'll see how we go there. I love Alton Park. I've done well there in the past, so I'm really always looking forward to Alton Park. We've got Donington, I think, twice over. So I think this year we've got quite a unique set of events that are coming up. So I would say all of them. I'm a bit apprehensive about Castle Combe, as I said, 'cause I've never been. But yeah, I'd say, Donington's going to be great. We had a good testing there in February, so hopefully we can repeat that. And then Alton, we've got some good history there, so we'll see. Fly the flag. I'll beat Charlie.
You heard it here, listener.
I beat him last year, so... Just
optimism from Nick on the podcast.
Doesn't come regularly. So.
Listen, Nick, it's been a lovely conversation I've had with you. Thank you so much for your time today, and I wish you all the best for the year ahead.
Thank you so much. Thank you for everything you do for us.
Well, it was good to speak with Nick Hyett. And if you want to find out about his dad's perspective on motorsport, you can listen on episode 8 in the podcast. Remember, if you want to keep connected to the podcast, then make sure that you subscribe by going on over to Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Now, welcome to Charlie Hyett, whom I also spoke to down at Brands Hatch. Welcome, Charlie, to the podcast.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
How did you get on in your race today?
We were somewhat hindered. Most of the race, similar to last year, was safety car, but I think we had about 7 racing laps, which for those 7 was thoroughly enjoyable and exciting, dicing with the fellow Sports 2000 drivers.
And what car do you drive, Charlie?
I drive a Lola 8790. I race in historic Class A, along with my father and brother.
I did speak to your brother earlier, asking him how he compared to you. How do you think you compare to your brother in terms of racing?
I think we're fairly evenly matched. We always have a great battle. We're in a similar car this year. So last year I was in a different car in a different class. So I was compared to racing with Dad and Nick. We were racing overall, yes, but on balance the cars were slightly different and the way it behaved and the characteristics meant that probably couldn't compete as much as I'd like to. However, this year it's a bit of a change, and because we're all racing in the same class, we can therefore battle with each other. So I think we match up pretty well, and as a team, and I'm sure we're going to talk about it later with the endurance racing, it works really well for us that we're all fairly evenly matched.
And when you're out on the circuit, Charlie, are you thinking this is my dad and my brother, or are you thinking these are 2 competitors?
Well, before the race we always talk about it and it all seems quite friendly and joking, and then we get out onto the track and somehow Dad becomes some racing demon and like we're any other competitor. For me and Nick, we're a little bit more kind. But no, I mean, even today we were battling quite a lot, myself and Nick and Dad as well. So we had some good battles. And yes, we see each other as competitors, very much so. But perhaps we'd give each other a little bit more room. Sometimes.
And what got you interested in racing? Obviously, given that your dad's raced in the past, that perhaps has something to do with it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I've grown up around motorsport. Obviously, Nick, he's about 10 years older than me, so actually he's going to kill me for saying that. It's a bit less than 10 years. But yeah, so I was the young one when Dad got back into the classic racing, and so I've lived through very much of that and been to most of the races since I can even remember. Whereas when Nick was grown up and old enough to go, Dad had a brief period where he stopped racing, so there's that different balance. But Nick's still been interested and come to a lot of the races anyway, even before we were racing, so we've been in thereabouts, and therefore that's kind of fueled my love for motorsport, just being there in and amongst it. It's just so exciting. There's no other adrenaline filled activity that gets me going as much as motorsport, and I'm sure most of the drivers will say the same.
And driving the Lola, is that the first type of car that you have driven, or have you been racing in other categories before this one?
No, so as I mentioned before, last year I was racing in historic Class C with Chris Snowden and his racing team, and I was racing a Tiger 1983, and that's now our endurance car. So I raced that car last year, and I haven't raced any other car apart from that.
And it's a nice segue into talking about endurance, because of course you were part of the family team at the endurance race at the end of 2022. How did you find that experience?
It was one where it was very interesting going in, because my dad and my brother, they had done it in the previous year with Chris Snowden and Mike Fry, and they'd done it together rather than as me joining as a family to make it a family event this year. They'd done it together with other people, so I'd kind of lived through it a little bit secondhand, somewhat vicariously through then, which was obviously filling my excitement from home, watching the timing screens most of the way through the night. And I was like, oh my goodness, I really want to get on and have a go at it, because it just seems so exciting. The whole event and being there at Paul Ricard, it's just such an amazing track. So we were very fortunate that we were able to do it as a family of 3 this year, just as a family without having any external drivers with us. Not that we wouldn't be opposed to it in the future, but we do like competing just together. It's quite special for us, and one of the things we're doing it as a family, we have a great time doing it, but the memories that we build together, it's a very unique thing to do as a family, especially for 3 of us, and to be, relatively competitive at the same time. It's just excitement and fun and memories building all the time.
And in terms of how you then set up that team to compete, how did you as a family work out what your race strategy was going to be?
Well, it comes down to something as simple as that Nick and I, and he will not fight me on this, we are so horrendous at starting races, and there'll be a few of you listening to this podcast bursting with laughter that every time we come off the line, you're going to pass us. So it was very simple. Our strategy was that Dad's going to start, and then we're going to take over once the race gets going, because we are so bad. that we don't want to ruin the start. And obviously, my father's done it for so long and done so many starts. You just do it, get it out of the way with, and we'll join later.
And what about night time?
We were all very much up for it. And once we got the start out the way, it was kind of just doing 2 hours on, 2 hours off, here and there, and how that slotted in around some of the mechanical issues we had, and how that slotted in with the fuel stops. And the driving time very much was everyone was agreed we're going to try and do at least an hour and 45 minutes each, and then if there's some mechanicals or a safety car, we'll try fit it around there. But it didn't really matter for us whether it was night or day, because we're also driven to get to the end result, which we were hoping to do a little bit better on.
Well, I think they always say in an endurance race, it is about finishing that's most important. Ideally, you want to finish on the top step. If that's not possible, at least you want to get your car to the end.
Absolutely. And this is the talk we had prior to the race. I was admittedly quite upset following the race, just the emotions that you go through, and also going through the year. I was so excited. And we had another English team there. It was run with Chris and Josh Law's team as well, and they did amazing. Obviously they won, and it was incredible to watch and to be so happy for them, another English team to go. But you then kind of afterwards think back and go, it was very frustrating, and it was a couple of weeks to get over and what happened, what could we have done better, that kind of thing. But ultimately, yes, you want to finish, but when you're a competitive car, you can't help but think, what if?
So I imagine there's a whole list of notes for 2023's race in terms of improvement points.
Oh, we've got all the excuses lined up ready to go.
Now, I also know that you're interested in yachting. Is that right?
Yes, that is correct. Been quite interested in yachts for many, many years. I went and did all my licenses to drive a different sizes vessel. And if I didn't go into finance, then I would have gone into yachting. In what capacity, I don't know. But at the moment, I'm working part-time with a new renewable electric yacht company and trying to help them come into the market. So I do that part-time alongside my day job and obviously the racing.
And do you think there is any connection between the skill that you developed through your yachting training and the skill of driving in this category?
It's interesting you say that. I think one main characteristic that would probably overlay would be the concentration. So when you're driving a yacht that's maybe 10, 20 metres, trying to dock it, bring it around when there's so many different functioning, moving parts, the people, where are they on the boat, where you're docking, where the mooring lines are coming in, the other boats that you have to be aware of, the different elements when you're docking. That's, I'd say, the most amount of time that you're going to spend on concentration overlaps with racing, because as you're racing, the concentration throughout the race is the focal point, really, because there's no let up. You know, on a lot of the tracks, there's not very many long straights to relax and calm and breathe for a moment. It's every lap is relentless, and especially the racing we do and the Duratec's, we're dicing with someone pretty much every lap, which is a testament to the series, obviously. But the concentration has to be there, and that's why I think one of the characteristics that overlap would probably be the focus and the concentration for extensive periods of time.
And are there any other specific things that you do for preparation for racing?
I think this is going to make me sound really bad, but in terms of preparation, there isn't much that goes into it. But apart from the thing that mainly gets you ready is even the weeks before a race, you're getting excited, you're getting the buzz. And on race day, the buzz is what I can only compare is if you've played another sport. I used to play rugby at school, and getting so anxious is the wrong word, probably just wanting to do well, the nerves of excitement to do well, that adrenaline that comes before the race is the main thing that gets you prepared. If you want to take it to the next level, then probably testing, I would say, is the main thing that would help you get prepared, aside from going to the gym and getting fit and those kind of things. But testing is probably the main thing, of which we don't really do a lot of. But yeah, it's obvious the main kind of hindrance to that is cost. That's the main obstacle, I would say, with testing.
And how have you found being part of the Sports 2000 community, Charlie?
When I joined last year, I was so open-eyed at the camaraderie and the reaching out of help from anyone in the paddock. Whenever I needed it, whenever I asked a question, there was always people there to help, no matter what. Whether you're a competitor, whether you're battling with someone, they were very much the first people to come over and say, okay, I think you should do this, or take this line. or change the brake bias slightly, or a setup, anything. And it's just a testament to the series, really, about how nice everyone is, how welcoming everyone is. And that's why it was so nice to come in and be a nobody and not know anyone, only through my dad and my brother who've raced previously, and then suddenly becoming friends with a lot of people, and how nice everyone was and welcoming to that.
It's something that consistently our other podcast guests have mentioned about the Sports 2000 community. So looking forward into the future then, for 2023, are there any particular circuits that you're looking forward to racing at this year?
I would say Donington again. I do like Donington. I think it's a great track. Silverstone, of course. When we go to Silverstone, that's just a very special place to be. For us, obviously, again, we're going to do the endurance race at the 24 hours with Paul Ricard. So racing Paul Ricard, every time we've done it twice now. The 24 hours, and we did the 6 hours a couple of months ago. And every time you're there, it's incredible place to be.
So maybe an opportunity in the preparation this year is to practice your French.
Yeah, and my concentration.
It's been lovely to speak to you on this podcast today, Charlie. Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks so much for having me on.
I hope you enjoyed my chat with Nick and Charlie Hyett. And isn't it wonderful to hear that family camaraderie? They both were on the podium at the recent race in Castlecombe, where Charlie also set the lap record for historic Pintos, as did Michael Gibbons in the Duratec category. Remember, if you want to be connected to the Sports 2000 community, you can do that on social media via Facebook, Instagram and Twitter. Join us again soon for another episode of the Sports 2000 podcast.